Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is your favorite Sunday school teacher, K. Edward Copeland, coming to you through the facilities of New Zion Missionary Baptist Church here in Rockford, Illinois. Today is July the 7th, 2024. It's the day the Lord has made, and we're rejoicing and we are glad in it. July, I told you, I've been telling y'all all that. Once we hit July the 4th, it's a wrap. You're going to blink the summer over. So you better get outside and enjoy what you can, because in a second, it'll be time for the children to go back to school and this, that, and other, and then we're going to be complaining about the weather. So make sure today you get outside and rub some sunshine on your face and take advantage of the fresh air and all that kind of old stuff. So today, I want you to, as always, check in first, whether you're watching this live or whether you're engaging with us later on during the day, later on in the week. We still want you to interact with us in the comment section. If you're on Facebook, obviously hit the, what is it, the hearts, the stars, the likes, whatever it is, whatever, mash the button. Yeah, I can't hear you say, man, you got to mash the button. Either put something in the comment section to let me know that you are tracking along with me. Today, we're going to continue on in our little series entitled, what is it? Idols in the Pantry. Lord, help us get these idols up out of here. So we're going to work on this thing today. Daughter, come and put us down just a little bit. We're going to work on this today, but I need you to check in first. Check in first. That's perfect. Right there. Come on in here, children. Let us know how you're doing today in a word or phrase. Type in what's going on with you today, how you're feeling emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You cannot be, what does the boy say? You cannot be, I think it's Pete Scazzaro, author of what? The Emotional Health or the Emotionally Healthy Church. I'm getting it confused now, but I know the author's name is Peter Scazzaro. Emotionally Healthy Discipleship, I think it's called. Anyway, he says you cannot be spiritually healthy and emotionally sick, because you ain't but one. The Bible says in Genesis chapter 2, he breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. That is one unit. You ain't but one thing. And what impacts you physically impacts you emotionally. What impacts you emotionally affects you spiritually, and vice versa. All those types of things. So we are doing our best. That's the wind blowing in the fireplace. We're doing our best to engage you from a biblical perspective in terms of your spiritual health and how you have to give attention to your emotional well-being, your physical well-being. All of that works together. Yeah, see if that's something downstairs. I'm sorry. How all of that works together. So even with your physicality and how that affects your emotions, we tell you to eat your colors, to drink more water, move your body, lay your fat head down. Why? Because if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be an emotional wreck. If you don't eat right, if your blood sugar is off all the time, then that affects you emotionally and eventually can affect you spiritually. So today I want you to type in how you're doing, and then I want you to type in the 3 things you're most grateful for. And then we're going to get at our lesson. We're going to get these idols up out the pantry. You understand the sort of terminology I'm using, and let's go ahead and get at it, because we got miles to go here. Idols in the pantry. What are you talking about? Idols in the pantry, Pastor? What are we even talking about? As I mentioned last week, usually when we think of an idol, we think of the golden calf in the 10 Commandments, or we think about, even in modern day, and I've intended to look it up, and I forgot to do so. I forgot where they were. I think it was at a CPAC meeting or something. They had a golden statue of former President Donald Trump. We usually think of something like physical, but an idol is not necessarily some kind of statue or something like that where people are bowing down to, but an idol very often is much more insidious, much more incognito, much more difficult to detect, because an idol can be anything you look for to give you complete and total fulfillment. An idol is that thing that you look at and you say, if I can only have that or do that or be that. And an idol, as I mentioned last week, is something good that you turn into something ultimate. Like, it's good to be ambitious, but when you make that your all in all, when you decide that if you don't achieve a certain goal, if you, or let's flip it, that once I achieve this certain goal, then my life will be significant. Then my life will be meaningful, and I'll have meaning in life. No, what you've done is you've taken something good and now you've turned it into something ultimate. Sexual intimacy is good within the confines of God's boundaries, but our society has made sex into a god. And so now from the internet to advertising to the music entertainment industry, what God intended to be good, we've turned it into something ultimate. Having money is good. You need money in order to navigate in this society. That's good. But when you take the ability to care for yourself, the ability to accumulate or to generate wealth, and you turn that into the ultimate thing, and what will happen is you can fool around and actually get a lot of money, and then the stock market crash, or we go into a recession or whatever, and you fall into such despair that you take your own life. That has happened more times than we would like to think about, simply because somebody took something that was good and turned it into something that is ultimate. So let's see if we can't get this. Now, the reason I've been talking about this idea of idols in the pantry is because sometimes we, in a very nuanced way, now think about it in terms of food. If you can't eat certain, and let's be honest, we all do this, and I'm using this sort of as an analogy. There's certain foods that you just got to have with certain things. So you ain't hardly going to eat no French fries without some what? Ketchup. And so somebody offer you some fries, say, where the ketchup? Well, we ain't got no ketchup. Well, I got to have some ketchup for these French. Well, do you really? You can actually eat, I don't know if you knew this, you can actually eat French fries without ketchup. But because of the way we've been conditioned, we say, well, if I can't have ketchup with it, I don't want any fries. I can't do it, type of thing. Or for the unregenerate, if you put salt on your grits. And for the saved, if you put sugar on your grits. That the idea is there's some stuff that you just, in your mind, have conditioned yourself to say, I got to have this. And what I'm saying is, in life, I'm using food as an analogy, but in life, sometimes we have set up little mini gods that we say that I just have to have this. If I don't have this, then my life is not meaningful or significant. Now, you might not say it in those words, but you act it out in certain ways. How you mean act it out? Well, if you don't get this particular thing, if you don't achieve this particular goal, if this thing doesn't happen the way you want it, do you fall into disappointment or do you fall into despair? If it's just disappointment, oh man, I thought I had it, or man, I wish this were true, or gee whiz, I thought I had planned this right and it didn't come out right. Okay, that's disappointment. But despair is a whole different animal. Despair usually reveals to us that we've turned that good thing into a God thing. And so one of the idols we picked up, let's jump in on it, children. You all still with me? Let's jump in on it. Last week I started off talking about the idol of how things ought to be. How, if I could review real quick, that everything is not going to be like you imagined it to be, but it could be more if you allow the Lord to get in that thing. Very often, life does not unfold the way we imagined it would be when we were young. And so I use the example of Jacob and his wives. You remember, Jacob was infatuated with Rachel when he first met her. And so he decided, since he didn't have any money, he decided to work for 7 years as a dowry in order to have the privilege to be able to marry Rachel. He had that thing planned out. The Bible says that he worked for 7 years, but to him it seemed like a few days because he loved her so much. But you know the rest of the story. The old man Laban, the Rachel and Leah's father, tricked Jacob. He sent Leah into the bridal chambers. You know, in those days, they stayed covered up and it was night and all that kind of stuff. He woke up the next morning and it was Leah instead of Rachel. In other words, things didn't turn out like he imagined they would be. But yet, if you keep on reading the story, Leah is the one who ultimately gave him a son named Judah. And it was through Judah that we get Jesus. It was Leah, if you read your Bible, actually, it was Leah who was actually buried in the family plot because Rachel sort of died early. In other words, he had to hang on to Leah, even though Rachel was his dream. But Leah is the one that provided the son that changed everything, as well as Leah is the one that lived the longest and was able to help him to achieve great things. I guess what I'm trying to say is things aren't always going to be the way that you imagined them when you were growing up. But it can be better. Let me hit another lick at that one, and then we're going to move a little bit swifter. You remember Joseph. He imagined things. And when I say imagine things, I'm not talking about a bad imagination. I'm not talking about you're imagining something evil or you're imagining something bad. I'm talking about you can imagine something good, but if you turn that good thing that you're imagining into something ultimate, then you're setting yourself up for not only disappointment, for despair. Joseph had a dream when he was a kid that, one day everybody's going to bow down to him. That's what he imagined. And that's what God had placed in him. But you do know that it didn't turn out exactly how he imagined, because he didn't plan on his brothers trying to kill him. He didn't plan on going into slavery. Didn't plan on catching a case while he was in slavery and going to prison. Didn't imagine being in prison forgotten. But as he clung to God, as God was in that thing all along, that thing still turned out better than what he imagined. So at the end of his life, he could say to his brothers, y'all meant it for evil, but God meant this thing for good. I'm trying to tell you, children, that one of the idols you got to get rid of is thinking that you can live life clinging to how it ought to be, as opposed to embracing what it actually is and letting God work it out to be something better than it ever could be. Let me say that again. You can either cling on to, well, this ain't how it's supposed to be, and be bitter and fall into despair as you look at your circumstances, as you look at your relationships, as you look at, well, this ain't how it's supposed to be, and you just stuck with how it's supposed to be, as opposed to say, wait a minute, okay, I know how it's supposed to be, man, I wish it wasn't like how it is, but this is how it is. Now let me start from here and let me see what God can do with this thing. Listen, if you will take how it's supposed to be out your pantry and throw it away, God got some other seasonings in the pantry. Because eye has not seen, ears not heard what the Lord has prepared. See, you so used to how it's supposed to be and clinging to that, you don't know that, man, if you just open up your fist, God will give you something better than what you even imagine. Wait a minute, let me get another look in here. This thing of how things ought to be, let me just say briefly that particularly when you've experienced trauma and you think, well, this ain't how it's supposed to be. Yeah, that's right. And it's true that depending on the trauma, depending on the breach in a relationship, depending upon what has actually happened, things are not ever going to be like they were, but they can be better. You can't unscramble an egg. Something happened in the family. And usually it ain't something that you had no choice in. It just maybe it's something that happened to you. You're like, man, this ain't how parents are supposed to protect, or friends are supposed to be with you through thick and thin, or this spouse or whatever. And here you are in this situation, and this ain't how it's supposed to be. But here's my admonition to you. Okay, yeah, it's true. This ain't how God would have preferred it to be. This might not have been God's perfect plan. But don't get stuck in the rut of, but this ain't how it's supposed to be. No, this is where you're at right now. And you can't go back. It's not going to ever be, in certain situations, depending on what's happened, it's not going to ever be like it was. But it can be better. It can be better. Don't get stuck in nostalgia and false memories and then become bitter. That's what happened to the children of Israel, right? God got them out of Egypt. They marched into the promised land. Matter of fact, let's see. Yeah, I got something to say about that a little bit later. But anyway, they started complaining about, maybe I'll hit it here. They started complaining about the fact that all they had to eat was manna. Now, mind you, manna was food from heaven. God rained down manna. Manna was a miracle. But they said, oh, we wish we was back in Egypt, because we had all the fish you could eat, and watermelon and onion and leeks and garlic and so like false memory. But you was in slavery. They was whipping your head every day. It's not going to be like it was, even when you're having hard times. Now, think about it. Now, they were wandering in the wilderness. They were in the desert, not partially, because of their unbelief. What should have taken 40 days literally took 40 years. And so it was not the ideal conditions. But you can't unscramble the egg now. You can't go backwards. You got to go forwards. And if you will stop clinging to false memories about the good old days, well, man, back in the day, I hear sometimes people who are saved talking about back in the day when they were not saved. Yeah, man, we used to do this. You was miserable. You don't get a false memory to cause you to not move forward because you're caught up in nostalgia. Let me say one last thing about that, how things ought to be. Things aren't always going to go according to your plans, but let's be honest, your plans weren't all that great from get-go, because in your plan, you didn't know what you didn't know. But God does know what you don't know. And if you knew all that God knows, you would thank him for how he's answering your prayers right now. I don't have 17 witnesses right here that you ought to thank God. Let me cut across the field here and say something I was going to say later. You ought to thank God that he didn't answer your prayers the way you prayed them. You were so in love with Junebug. You infatuated with him. Lord, that's the one you want. Or Shaniqua, if you're a man. Oh, she's the one. She's the one. And then things didn't come out like you planned or whatever. And now here, now you go back to your class reunion and you see how Shaniqua turned out, and you see what happened with Junebug, and you ought to just be shouting right in the little thing. Because God knew what you didn't know. You know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. But God knows everything. And he gives us, listen, he's the author of every good and perfect gift. He's a good God, and everything he will not withhold, he will withhold nothing. He will withhold nothing good from those who will walk uprightly. So if you ain't got it, it wasn't good. Or if it is good, listen carefully. If it is good, there's a timing issue. And sometimes he only gives us what we actually want when we're ready to handle it. So stop talking about, well, this ain't how it's supposed to be. Well, this is how it is, because you ain't ready yet. This is how it is. He waiting for you to grow up. And he got the blessing. He said, man, yeah, I want you to have that you want. I'm the one that put that desire in you. But I'm waiting for you to get disciplined enough to handle it. I'm waiting for you to grow up enough to be able to receive it. Because if I give it to you now, you're going to mess yourself up and it up. You praying for those of you praying for a spouse. Okay, pray. That's a good thing. Listen to what I'm saying. That's a good thing. But don't make that the ultimate thing. Don't make that, well, if I don't get married, I'm, all my life, or if I get married, then I'm going to be this and that. And so you fool around and make that good thing, a marriage, an ultimate thing. And then what'll happen? You'll get disappointed. Why? Because while you courting and while you making marriage, once I get married, because you saying, once I get married, then everybody look at me. I'm tired of being the bridesmaid. Everybody looking at me talking about when you get married, I'm tired of all that. So if I can get married, then, and so you slip up and the Lord lets you meet somebody and he says, not time yet, but you so infatuated. I love him. Oh, I can't live without him. I just love how he breathes. And then you slip up and fool around and get married to that joker. And because you turned a good thing into an ultimate thing, you try to put pressure on the marriage to fulfill you in ways only God can fulfill you. And now you bitter at this joker because he ain't God. And now what used to turn you on now gets on your nerves. Here he come breathing again. Every time I look up, his lungs expanding, breathing in and breathing out. Why don't you go somewhere and stop breathing? Wait a minute. Well, see, when you turn a good thing into an ultimate thing, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, particularly as it relates to people, because people can't live up to your fantasy. They can't live up to your little imagination. They can't live up to your whatever, because God ain't going to let nobody be God but him. So when you try to make another joker God, or when you try to make, your marriage, or when you try to make, let's hit another, when you try to make parenting, you say, if my children, see, you try to make little bitty gods. If my children do well, then I will have significance. Well, he's just a human. She's just another person, just like you. Matter of fact, she's a little mini you, just as messed up as you. And so the little child, they can't live up to this weight, these expectations. And so they make some bad choices and they do certain things. And now you fall into not just disappointment. Now, it's all right to be disappointed. Say, oh man, my child is struggling. I wish they wouldn't make that choice. I wish Lord help them. Okay, that's disappointment. There's nothing despair. You making the family look bad. You going through all of that and you acting out because the choices they make. Well, what that's telling you is you'd have made a good thing, that is parenthood, into a God thing. That if my children don't reflect perfectly on me, then my life will fall into despair. And so you try to live your little life through your children. How many parents do that with sports? or with, what do they call these little beauty pageants and stuff like that, where you're putting all this pressure on this small human being to be your little God, because you took a good thing and now you're trying to make it an ultimate thing. Let me get another lick in. I'm trying to get these idols out my pantry. First one I got out, I'm reminding you, this is me. These little lessons last week, this week, and I think I got one more next week. I'm sharing with you what I'm working on with me. Okay. I'm trying to be all that God has called me to be. I can't be till I get these idols out my pantry. Let me give you another one I've been working on. The idol of, this is a tough one. I've been trying to shake this one off. The idol of, if only everyone was like me. The idol of, can I help you? You ain't the prototype. You ain't the model. But all of it, I know I do it, and I got a sneaking suspicion you do. You wish everybody was like you. And if they would just do it like you want it done, if they would just follow your advice, because you all wise. If they would just do it like you want it done, then life would be perfect. If only I don't hear nobody. Somebody type in, if only everyone was like me. Let's get this idol up out of here. Let me describe it so you can recognize it when you see it and stop shaking it on all your little salads. If only everybody was like me. This idea, and I had to struggle with this. Matter of fact, my friend, I want to give a shout out to Pastor Devereaux Huppert, who's wise beyond his years and just a great friend. I can't remember how we was talking about. Oh, yeah, I remember now. We were talking about something, and I was sort of in a funk. And he's like, Cope, what's going on? I said, well, man, I'm exactly where I don't want to be in certain areas, but I saw it coming. So years ago, I started saying, okay, well, man, this needs to happen, that needs to happen. And I tried to warn this person about this and this, that, and other. And now here I am exactly where I don't want to be, even though I saw it coming. I tried to warn people. I tried to do this. And he said, well, what's the real problem? He kept on asking questions. That's what a wise person knew. He kept on, exactly. He took my advice. Just keep a joker talking. He did that to me. He worked out on me. I was like, this dude, he good. This boy good. He done got me on my stuff. He kept me talking. He said, well, Cope, what's the real problem? He said, now what's that? Why are you feeling? He just kept on asking questions. And it finally boiled down to, he said, where I said out my own mouth, I said, well, if people would just, I forgot how I said it, but in essence, the bottom line was, if people would just do what I tell them to do, everything would be all right. He said, oh, so in other words, if everybody was like you. I said, yeah. I said, keep a joker talking. They tell on themselves every time. That's an idol. See, let me say something very clearly. All of us have strengths and weaknesses. All of us have unique contributions that we can make because of the way God has wired us, given us temperament, personality, skills, training, spiritual gifts. But none of us is the prototype. Jesus is the prototype. And very often we highlight our strengths and discount our weaknesses. And we very often try to compare our strengths with other people's weaknesses and compare their weaknesses with our strengths. But you are not the prototype. And everybody ain't supposed to be like you. And you ain't even the you were 10 years ago. And hopefully you'll be a better you 10 years from now. Let's get Bible on that. Turn to Luke chapter 18. Luke chapter 18, Jesus told a parable. Let me read this to you and see how it works out with you and I. Luke chapter 18, starting with verse 9. he also told this parable to some people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Two men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. Now listen to what the Pharisee get ready to say. The Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself. God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. Now watch this. Now let me stop right there. You say, what this got to do with anything, Pastor? All of us have got a little bit of Pharisee in us that we need to shake off. Look at what he said. He said, I'm glad he was articulating the truth that I've described in a converse way. He didn't say, I wish everybody was like me. He said, I'm glad I'm not like everybody else. Same difference. Same difference. See, I'm glad I'm not like everybody else. All these swindlers, unjust, adulterers. Matter of fact, this ain't like this little tax collector right here. In other words, I'm the prototype. Literally, in another way to put it, if everybody was just like me, we used to sing a song. They used to sing a song when I was growing up at Morning Star. It was called "If Everybody Was Like Jesus, What a Wonderful World It Would Be." Now that's true, but if everybody was like me, dude, man, we'd be messed up. We'd be messed up. Look at what the boy said. He said, I'm glad I'm not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all I get. Now, again, here's my point. Now, is anything wrong with that? No. Matter of fact, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But that is the ultimate. That don't mean that you're better than somebody. But look at what happened. Verse 13. But the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. I tell you, this man went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Come here, Jesus. Thank you for helping us. Jesus is the prototype. And we ought to be like, and this, I've added this into my prayer lexicon. God be merciful to me, the sinner. God be merciful to me, the sinner. Now, instead of, why don't they do it like I do? Man, common sense will tell you, why don't, no, flip that thing. God be merciful to me, the sinner. Listen, the mission that we're on, I'm trying to get rid of this idol. I'm trying to get this out of my system, that if everyone was like me. Listen, the mission that we're on is bigger than your personality, preferences, and predilections. In other words, your tendencies. The mission that we're on, this is what I had to tell myself. I got the idol out the pantry. They keep on trying to sneak in. I said, no, you ain't getting back in here. Because the mission that I'm on is bigger than my personality, bigger than my preferences, and bigger than my predilections. That is how I want to see it done. So I've had to learn how to let go, even in ministry. Let me just say this on a personal model. Even in ministry here at the church, I'm learning. I haven't got it. I should be way further ahead than I am. I should be further down the road than I am. But I'm trying to catch up to the Holy Spirit. I'm trying to catch up to where. Now, see, look, there's a little idol trying to sneak in right there. Listen, I can't deal with where I ought to be. I got to deal with where I am and then make progress from right here. But here's what I mean by this. In ministry, I've had to learn to let go of things. And even if the person doesn't do it the way I would do it, as long as it get done. My preference is not the model. The issue is it getting done? Is the work getting done? Is the ministry moving forward? And so just because I wouldn't have picked that color, I wouldn't have picked that font, I wouldn't have done it that way. What that got to do with anything? Who cares about the font? Is the message clear? You see what I'm saying? Let me give you some more Bible on this. Turn to Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15. Is this helping anybody? Acts chapter 15. I'm trying to help you identify and get rid of some of these idols. Acts chapter 15. Look at verse 37. Starting with verse 36. Acts chapter 15, starting with verse 36. What I'm trying to point out is the mission is bigger. So this idol of everybody needs to be like me. Well, you a singer, you sing like you sing. Let them sing how they sing. You preacher, you preach your little Easter speech. Let them do their Easter speech the way they do it. You, whatever you're doing for the glory of God, you are not the prototype. Jesus is. So don't get caught up if everybody was like me, or the converse. I'm glad I'm not like everybody else. That's the prideful way. That's the Pharisaic way of expressing that same little idol. Look at Acts chapter 15, verse 36. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brethren in every city in which we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. Now, what Paul said, man, we've been traveling all around here. So, man, let's go back and check on the fellas. Let's lay eyes on them, see what's happening with them. So, verse 37 said, Barnabas wanted to take John, called Mark, along with them also. But Paul kept insisting that they should not take him along, who had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. And there occurred such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. Paul chose Silas and left, being committed by the brethren to the grace of the Lord. And he was traveling through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. What happened here? There was a sharp disagreement that was really based on personality and preferences. John Mark had sort of bailed out on one of the missionary trips that they had taken. And so when Barnabas and Paul decided that they would, hey, let's go back and visit everybody that all these churches we've helped establish. Let's go check on them, make sure they're all right. Barnabas, the son of encouragement, the one who encouraged Paul when nobody else fooled with him. Barnabas, matter of fact, that wasn't even his actual name. That was his nickname. His nickname is Barnabas. Matter of fact, his actual name was Joseph. Joseph, a Cyprian by birth. That is why his first trip, he decided to go back home. He went back to Cyprus. His name was Joseph, but he was so encouraging, they called him Barnabas. Barnabas is Hebrew for son of encouragement. He said, well, man, let's get John Mark. Let's give John Mark another chance. And Paul said, no, he flaked out the last time. We ain't taking him with us, so on and so forth. And they got to argue so much that they had to actually split. What is my point? My point is simply this. That don't miss the point of this text is that the mission was bigger than their personalities. So Barnabas had an encouraging spirit. And I'm sure he wished Paul was more encouraging, but Paul was more assertive, more had that prophetic gift. He was more direct. He was more black and white, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure he wished Barnabas was more like him. But what happened? They say the mission is too important. Barnabas went ahead and took John Mark, and he kept on going where he was going. Paul picked up Silas, and he kept going where he was going, because the mission is bigger than I wish everybody was like me. Paul, won't you be more like me? Barnabas, won't you be more like me? No. We got to be who we are. And even if that means that we got to partner with different partners in different seasons of ministry, that's all right too. Because the mission is bigger than your little idol of everybody need to do it like I do it. Let me give you another one in here. Let me see if I can get, I think I can get maybe one or two more in here, and then we'll be done for today. The idol of, this is another idol that sort of attaches to the other ones, but it's slightly different. The idol of self-sufficiency, or another name for this idol is I can fix it. Now, it's good to be independent. It's good to be a problem solver. But when you take that good thing and make it an ultimate thing, that I can fix everything, I can fix it. I've had to work on this. I'm still working on it. I'm still working on the fact I can't fix everything. I'm still working on the fact that God hadn't even asked me to fix everything. How about that? Let's start right there. That's why I put in my little prayer lexicon, and I hope that you've added it to your little prayer vocabulary, This prayer, Lord, what do you require of me? Because my tendency is to think, oh, I can fix it. Whether it's something that's going on with me, I can fix it. I got it. No, I don't. Sometimes listen, if you need help, you just need help. And at some point, you got to recognize that you can't fix everything. But then, wait a minute, sometimes other people are bringing me stuff. And I'm like, I can fix it. They came to me. I can fix it. No. Did God say you're supposed to fix it? See, that's where codependency. See, this idol of self-sufficiency, and another way to say it, let's call it the idol of I can fix it. This idol of I can fix it leads people into codependency because you start taking responsibility for somebody instead of being responsible to them. In the Bible, the Christianity, God himself has not called us to be responsible for. Now, we got to be responsible for our babies, our little bitty children, but you ain't responsible for another grown person. Now, you're responsible to them, responsible to love them, responsible to, strive to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, but you're not responsible for them. And the only reason you're trying to be responsible for that big old grown joker is because you got the idol of I can fix it. Let mama fix it. Let big mama fix it. Junebug done got in trouble once again. And here you go, putting up the house well, thank God we got rid of bond. Thank God. We done saved a lot of families here in Illinois because we got rid of bond and bail. But you understand the principle. Junebug in debt, big mama gonna fix it. Cutting so-and-so in debt, well, Pawpaw, he can fix it. Your spouse does something irresponsible, I can fix it. Stop. Listen, get that idol out of your pantry. Now, it's good to be compassionate. It's right to be empathetic, but it can become an idol if you think you can fix everything and everybody, because you can't. Matter of fact, God will make sure you can't even fix some stuff with you. Come here, Paul. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm coming toward an end. I'll be on time today. Just got a few last little things I want to say. I'm almost done. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. You can't fix everything. So get that little idol out of your mind. Take it out of your pantry. You remember Paul had that thorn in his flesh starting in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself. What does that mean? To keep me from thinking I can fix everything. That's the Copeland translation. Keep me from cavorting with this idol of self-sufficiency. To keep me from exalting myself, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. My brothers and sisters, you can't fix everything, including some of the things that are going on with you. And all the time, and this is a mystery within the economy of the kingdom. Sometimes we're blaming the devil for certain things that God has allowed for our good. Look in your Bible, verse 7 again. It says, a messenger of Satan to torment me, But read the verse before that. Read the phrase before that. There was given me a thorn in the flesh. Who gave it? See, let's cut across the field. The devil is trying to take you out, but God has him on a leash. But God does allow certain things to happen so that we can learn to depend on him more fully, because you can't fix it. Listen, there's some things, if you're a parent, that your children are going to go through that you can't fix. Ain't nothing you can do about it. And all you have, the only thing you can do is depend on God, and that his grace will be sufficient. There's some things that can happen to your health that you did everything you're supposed to do. And I tried everything. I was talking to one of the sisters yesterday that gave a tremendous testimony about how God is healing her from cancer and all this kind of stuff. Well, the sister, she ain't smoked, she ain't doing nothing wrong, she eating right, doing what she's supposed to do, still got cancer. And she couldn't, listen, she has to depend on God, and God is pulling her through that thing. There's certain things that can happen if you're married, in your marriage with your spouse, that you cannot fix because you are not God. And you got to be careful about that codependency thing. You got to be careful about either trying to put yourself in the position of God or letting them put the pressure on you as if you were God, because you're not either one. Come here, Paul. Let me keep reading verse 8. Concerning this thing, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me. And he has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I'd rather boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I'm well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. What does he mean? What is he talking about? He said, man, instead of boasting in my self-sufficiency, I got it. I'm a boast, man. I ain't got it. I can't do it. Because you know what that means? God, it's on you. Hey, I can't, Lord, I'm going to put this in your hands. I'm going to cast all my cares upon you. I'm going to cast my burden upon the Lord because he'll sustain me. I'll cast all my cares upon him because he cares for me. And his grace is sufficient. Well, those are 3 or 4 items. Let me point out something that I want to impress upon you. And that is this, that you got to be careful about trying to use God to get something else, whether it be the idol of how things ought to be, if everybody was like me, this idol of I can fix it, whatever it is. Now, all of these things, up under them, there's some good things that we're trying to make God things. What I'm telling you is, if you're trying to use God to get something, and you have to say, and you say that you have to have that thing in order to have meaning or in order to have a meaningful life, then whatever that thing is your God. And you're just using God as your servant. So be careful. I was reading in my devotion this week, Psalm 78, and this is where I want to end. Just these last few admonitions. Turn in your Bible right quick to Psalm 78. Psalm 78, we'll pick up around verse 18. This is where I want to end today. And what I've said about these idols is idols are good things. We make ultimate things. But I've also said, don't try to use God to get something else, because what you're really saying then is, when I say use God, I'm saying, well, God, if you'll do this for me, then I'll serve you. That's what Jacob said when he was running away from Esau. In other words, you'll be my God. And Jacob actually said it. If you'll do this for me, then you'll be my God. Wait a minute. God is God regardless. But what you're literally saying is that this, God, I want you to give this to me, because this thing is what will give me ultimate fulfillment, ultimate meaning or satisfaction. So really what you're saying is that thing is God, and you're just using God as your servant, your cosmic bellhop. Look what happened in Psalm 78. I'm not reading the whole thing, but it says in verse 18, Psalm 78, starting with verse 18, it says, and in their heart they put God to the test by asking food according to their desire. Or another translation said, they willfully put God to the test by demanding the food that they craved. In other words, God had been raining down manna, but they wanted meat. So they put God to the test, and verse 19 says they spoke against, let me read it from, I think the ESV. They spoke against God. They said, can God really spread a table in the wilderness? True, he struck the rock and water gushed out and streams flowed abundantly, but can he also give us bread? Can he supply meat for his people? When the Lord heard them, he was furious. His fire broke out against Jacob. His wrath rose against Israel, for they did not believe in God or trust in his deliverance. Now here's a significant problem here. God had done all these things for, got water from a rock, rained down bread out of heaven, but they say, but we want something else. We can't, if you go back and read the Old Testament records, say, we'll die. We can't live unless we have some meat. Got manna, water from a rock, miracles every day, but we got to have the meat. Arby. We got to have the meat. In other words, they're putting God to test. See, in essence, what they were saying is, what have you done for us lately? Yeah, you did all of this. But what we really want, in other words, what they really were saying is, this thing we crave means more to us than you. And that's what we got to fight against, children. Tim Keller had something to say about this in his little book called The Songs of Jesus, where he was talking about this verse. He says, putting God to the test, like we see in verse 18, is one of the essential impulses of the human heart. No matter what God has done for us, our hearts always say, but what have you done for me lately? The evil of this is that we reverse places with God. We put him on probation, making our relationship conditional on how well we think he performs. But God created the universe with a word of his power, and even the galaxies are like dust before him. Is that the kind of person you ask to be your personal assistant? That's what Tim Keller said. Don't put God on probation to see if he gonna come through and give you your little G-O-D. In other words, you craving meat more than him. You craving meat more. Listen, children, what do you crave? Now, let me end here by pointing out the questions I asked you last week. I'm done. What do you want and why do you want it? What do you want from God? You can want a good thing, but why do you want it? Are you trying to make that thing that you want from God to be your functional God and you're just using God as a personal assistant to get that thing? What do you want and why do you want it? And how do you respond when God doesn't come through with what you want the way you want it? I already told you that, or let me say it plainly, that the worst thing that it was coming out their nostrils in verse 29. So they ate and were filled, and he gave them what they desired. Verse 30, before they had satisfied their desire, while the food was in their mouth, the anger of God rose against them and killed some of the fattest ones, the stoutest ones, and subdued the choice men of Israel. The worst thing sometimes that God can do is give you what you asking if you're not asking in the spirit. Let me end right there by asking you once again, what do you really want from God? What is your heart's desire? If God were to ask you right now, what do you want? Write it out. What do you really want? But then the more important question is, why do you want that? For what reason do you want that? You could be wanting a good thing. I want to be married. Why? Well, so people stop asking me why I ain't married. Well, I ain't gonna get it. What do you want? Well, I want my children to act right. Why? Because I'm embarrassed. I think people think I'm a bad parent. Well, that ain't, no. What do you want? Well, I want my spouse to do this or do that. Why do you want that? Because I don't want people to think I'm a bad husband, a bad wife. So other people's opinion are your actual God. That's what you're saying. Because if they don't, if your children never act right, if you never get married, if your spouse continues to do whatever they're doing, and you fall into despair, it's because that idol of either I can fix it, the idol of everybody ought to be like me, the idol of this ain't how it's supposed to be, or maybe it's the idol of other people's opinion of me that has caused me to fall into despair. Whereas if I say, well, I want to get married, but if I don't, I still got a life. And it's still beautiful. Matter of fact, I can come when I get ready, leave when I please. And walk around the house in my drawers. And can't nobody say that. Clean up when I get ready. You see what I'm saying? And I got friends. And I got people that love me. I wish I was. I'm not going to fall into despair because I'm not. If my children continue to make bad choices, I wish they wouldn't. I know how much it hurts them. But I'm going to leave them in God's hands. I did all that I could. And I'm going to continue to do what I can. But they're grown. And they can make decisions. And I got to live my life. God has held me accountable, not for the choices that they make, if they're grown people. And I'm just going to keep on praying for them. And I'm going to thank God for my godchildren and for these other spiritual children I got. If I'm married and my wife, my husband don't ever do what I want them to do, well, they ain't me. They ain't supposed to be me. They got their own calling, all that kind of stuff. And even if our marriage ain't the perfect marriage, well, matter of fact, in the Bible, I didn't see no perfect marriages. Hosea married a prostitute. She cheating on him all the time. Abraham, his wife Abraham lied. Abraham pimped his wife. She was lying. They was having all kind of problems. And yet they made it in the book. Matter of fact, they in the Hall of Fame of faith. Ain't no perfect marriages. And so, man, I wish things were different. But I'm going to take it from where it is right here, and I'm going to move forward. What if you've been divorced? What if you've been divorced? I have some friends, actually a couple, that have just recently got divorced. Said, man, I wish it would. This ain't how it's supposed to be. That's right. But you can't control another person. If they don't want to be in the thing, you can't make them be in the thing. And you say, well, is my life less meaningful now? No, that ain't, no. You still a child of God. And your life was not defined by who you were connected with. Your life is defined by who has redeemed you. And so, man, this ain't how it's supposed to be. I wish it were different. But guess what? I'm going to pick up my little life and I'm going to keep on moving forward. I'm going to be like Adele. That's my hero. Adele got divorced. And what she do? She wrote an album about it, bestseller. Last scene, sitting courtside with a billionaire. Because she said, hey, it's disappointing. I wish it wasn't like that. I couldn't fix it. But guess what? I'm going to write a song about it, and I'm going to keep on moving forward. I'm going to lose my little weight, and I'm going to be sitting up pretty next time you see me. You see how that works? Well, those are the ones I'm trying to get out of my pantry. I hope that helped you. I got one more lick next week. Thank you for patience, and thank you for listening. I hope it helped you. Go back and listen to it again. Go back and look at those scriptures. I love you, but God loves you most, and I look forward to catching you. Guess what? Next week, we start our centennial celebration. We got 2 weeks of it because we know people on vacation and all that kind of stuff. So you up around here, come on through here. We got tailgate on the 13th. That's from 11 to 3. And then on the 14th, we got service in that morning. Then service that evening, Dr. Charlie Dates is coming at 6 p.m. And then we have a whole nother thing on the 21st. Pastor Bennett will preach at 10 o'clock that morning, the Dean of Preachers here in Rockford, Illinois. Then at 6 o'clock that evening on the 21st, we'll be burning our mortgage and hearing from 7 different generations here at the church. So come on in here and come on celebrate with us if you're around these parts. God bless you, children, and we'll catch you next week.